Hi friends, welcome to Embrace the Question. My name is Steve and I want to first thank you for watching this video. Thank you for supporting the channel. It's just encouraging to know that there are folks out there that enjoy studying the Word in their free time. Just people that pursue the things of God. I appreciate that. So thank you. We are going to discuss the story coming out of 2 Kings 4:28 or 4:38 through 41, Death in the Pot. The story of Elisha and his students at Gilgal. Now, Gilgal was one of the schools of the prophets located there in Israel, in the Promised Land. Gilgal was more like a seminary of sorts. And in this case, Elisha was the teacher. Remember, Elisha was the student of Elijah who had already ascended into the whirlwind, right? So we have this interesting story taking place where Elisha is teaching his guys, it's time to eat, and he says, fill the pot with stew. So they're going to make a stew or a soup. And one of his disciples, one of his students, runs out into the field and starts to collect. In some translations, it says gourds. He probably thinks it's squash or some sort of vegetable that is edible. Well, he brings it back, he cuts it up, he throws it in the pot. There's a lot of things in the pot. And they begin to eat. I'm sure it cooks for a while. They're all hungry. They all begin to eat. And it doesn't take long before somebody screams out, there's death in the pot. So if you recall this story, you will remember that Elisha takes a handful of meal, throws it in the pot, stirs it in, and then pours out what's left to everybody so that they can eat. The antidote for the poison is in the pot. So everyone begins to eat and everyone is fine. That which is in the pot is good to eat now. So a couple of things to note about this story. It's somewhat confusing. Where did this take place? This took place in the Promised Land. This is the land of milk and honey. There's not supposed to be a lack in the Promised Land. But we remember from Deuteronomy 28 that if the people don't keep the commands of God, they turn away from the Word, that there will be such things as plagues, there will be such things as famine. And that is the case here in the Promised Land. This passage starts out with, and famine in the land. 5 words. Very emphatic. Anything you see in the italics is not actually in the original language. It's simply, and famine in the land. Definitely a bad time. Now, Elisha had been in the house, the home of the Shunammite woman. Remember, she was going through problems of her own. He could have stayed because there was provision in that house. That's on up at the top of the chapter. But he didn't. He had obligations. He felt the call of God to come and teach the men in the school of the prophets. So that's where the story begins. But now we have the mystery of this soup, right? The soup represents a conglomeration of all kinds of things from the world. It's a hodgepodge of ingredients. And what we have the people feeding on is a lot of unknowns, things that are just thrown in, and people consume it. Are you starting to get a picture now of what we do? We consume things from all these different sources. They can very often be poisonous, especially if it's only from the world. The Israelites were under heavy influence from the Baals, worship of Baal. That was Jezebel and Ahab's god of choice, if you'll recall that. We have all these influences coming into the pot, and we consume what's in the pot. But what you don't realize is that some of that stuff makes you cramp up. And then pretty soon, depending on how much you've consumed, you can't keep anything down. And you can't recover. You're in a state of dehydration. You're starving to death. And that is the state of the world. And that is what happens when you consume that which is in the world's pot. There's death in it. But now the man of God, Elisha, who is the Old Testament mirror of who Jesus is in the New Testament, he takes some meal and he throws it in the pot. The waters are made sweet. It's sort of like the picture of Marah to me from the Old Testament. Marah, where the waters were bitter, but Moses took the stick and threw it in the water and the waters were made sweet. It's very similar to that. But now we have a thing called faith that comes into play, because all the guys are laying around clenching their stomachs in pain, and the answer to their problem is to eat more stew. So they have a decision to make. Am I going to eat more of that? Or am I going to lie here until I die, or hope that I somehow survive this pain? So they, by faith, by the word of the man of God, they eat more stew, and they're fine. They're healed. Now, the meal that was thrown in, this is wheat. This is ground seed. This is a picture of Christ. This is a picture of Christ, the good seed, the bread of life, if you will, right? So with Christ in what we consume, there is life. But when it is only a conglomeration of elements from the world, there's death in the pot. So I hope this story now makes a little more sense. There's definitely more detail you can mine out of it, but this is the track, right? This is the picture we're painting, and now you can go in and look at it on your own and fill in even more details than I've given you here. So I hope you've enjoyed this teaching. Like, subscribe, and I will see you next time. Peace.